much for joining us on the Modern Job Search Checklist. We're here every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern to help serve you, those of you who are looking for a job and are interested in finding out what the latest things are for job search. And today we've got a special adventure. I should say adventure or episode. I'm not sure yet, but either one would probably apply. Of course, is my co-host Damian Burkle. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. And not to delay too long, this week we have a guest moderator slash guest host. She was a guest a few months ago, and we got her back, Kirsten Briggs. You can check her out at All Points LinkedIn if you want to follow her. And of course, her site, which she says don't send people there. I said go anyway. Trackrecruiter.com. How are you, Kirsten?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. Did we lose Damien? He went off my
Uh,
screen.
yeah, he disappeared for a second, but
Oh, there he
really,
is. Hey.
so you you get to moderate Damien and I, which might be quite a task to do. So we'll try to
No,
behave
I'm ready
ourselves.
for it. So, first and
Okay.
foremost, thanks for having me back. And even more so in this capacity, I'm very excited. Anytime I get to be on the other side of the microphone, it's a
Yeah.
pleasure for me because I love learning from other folks, especially fantastic folks like you and Damien, Mark. So let's jump right in.
Mhm.
We were having a little conversation, backstage, so to speak, about some timely topics and things that are going on, sharing our frustrations about being in the job search market and what to look out for. So I'm going to throw this first question or this first topic out to both of you. Are are there things that job seekers should be paying close attention to when it comes to selecting a career coach to assist them in landing their next job?
Well, I'll go first because I have a fairly strong opinion. First of all, um, I don't do the career coaching thing anymore personally, so I don't have any horses in the race. But having said that, I know I have a lot of my colleagues who are certified career coaches that have very strong opinions and saying that, yeah, you have to have that ICF or the International Coaches Federation certification, a relationship, whatever, and things like that. And I understand the discussion because I was a personal trainer, and a lot of people are on all the social networks. Somebody can just hang a shingle because it's not a state or federal regulated thing, which is which is in part not true as far as personal training because there are some guidelines that would have to be followed. So yeah, but people can often tell a good one and bad one. Career coaching could be half of one and half of another, and really, yeah, people should be selective, but I don't think necessarily they have to have a certification these days because really most people survive most of their lives without one. And I think some people, career coaching, and I know some of my colleagues may get mad at this, but it is a luxury item the way they charge for the most part. It is hiring at a good bit of money these days, and
Yes.
only a few can really afford that. So I understand that people also put out their shingles and say the executive coaching. I think that's where we kind of get into some really creepy jungle area because I have some feelings about that as well, which I could bring up
Mm,
in another round of this, but I'm gonna let
okay.
Damien go. He has a coaching certificate, so I'm gonna let him
Oh,
kind of run with it from there. But I don't know what direction he'll run.
okay.
Um, I have three certifications, and that's all fine. I've learned over the past 30 years that the magic comes from listening and being able
Mm,
to identify with the candidate. Another thing is, in my opinion, and again, this will probably alienate people, but I don't think you're qualified to tell a person how to get a job unless you've lost a job.
Ooh-wee. Come on now.
Now, the way that I have been providing services is different because of the fact that I've run a support group for 30 years and have lost my job 4 times and have had to start over, redefine myself, and begin again. And there is a resonance, meaning people can identify with that. Now, what I just said is for me. That doesn't go for everybody else.
Right.
When it comes to a career coach, here are some of the things, here are some of the questions you have to ask. First one is, how long have you been doing this? What are your qualifications? What are the things that you are going to do for me across the amount of time that we are going to spend? Is your product guaranteed? And if it's guaranteed, what does that mean? Is that satisfaction guaranteed until I'm satisfied? Or does that mean money back if I'm dissatisfied, etc.? And regardless of what the price is, a person is paying you for your knowledge, for what you've learned. And I will grant that over the past 4 years, job searching in itself has changed dramatically.
Absolutely.
And if you do not know that, if you do not know how to have a robust search engine optimized resume, LinkedIn profile, if you do not know the basics of how to network after COVID, in COVID, all of those things are critical. And so you can kind of separate the chaff from the wheat by having a good conversation with whoever it is you're thinking about hiring. And here's the kicker. You want to ask for 3 people that were very satisfied, and you want to ask for 3 people that weren't satisfied with your services, because then you will really find out how good that career counselor is, because we all make mistakes. We all bump up against people that for whatever reason we can't work with. And if you've had an experience where that didn't work and you've given their money back, well, then they should rise to the occasion and talk about all the things that you did to help them, and then go on from there. The other thing is, and I have been modified over the years, and that is there's no one right way to find a job. Just like there is no one right resume. And where I get concerned is when you have a career counselor who's telling you you can only get there this way, and I have this secret formula that if you follow, you will get a job, when in fact the responsibility for finding a job always rests on the shoulder of the person who's job searching. And if you're not told that in the very first meeting, be careful, because you could do everything that person said and still come out on the other side without a job. So to kind of sum up what I'm saying, interview the people, actually, I would say 3 that you're thinking about working with. Talk to others that they have worked with in the past. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to ask how much it costs. because there is a huge spectrum of what people charge, and you need to know that going in so that you can make a decision. Because for me, when I was out of work and I paid for outplacement out of my own pocket, what I found out is most of the information that they gave me, and I won't mention their name because they finally were investigated and were found out to be the sham organization that they were, at least at that time.
Oh,
Most of the information that I was given, I was able to also find at a public library.
yes.
I wish you would mention names. I really do.
He's not going to mention names.
Tell us all the goodies. It was the dirt. But I think, but to some point, there's a validity in talking about bad services. But
Yeah.
that maybe is another show we'll have to deal with. But I like the way that Damien put it, and really the end ultimately for career coaching and a lot of services like that that are not regulated, that have more of a that have more of a tribe mentality, if you so to speak, is that
Mm,
you've been successful before. That's really the only entry that you need. And LinkedIn allows you for people to put their recommendations. So really, you don't have to even ask. You can go and a LinkedIn recommendations from a real live person. Now, if you
correct.
want to know about methodology, that's a whole nother discussion. But is that person going to really care about the methodology, so to speak, when they're paying for a coach who has helped 100 people
Right.
and helped with whatever methodology? I'm not going to argue about who's successful if somebody's helped 50, 100 people, because there's a ton like that. I saw someone who doesn't have any certification got 400 and something recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I going to say, well, they don't have a coaching certificate, so they didn't go? Who cares at that particular point? You're dealing with somebody successful, because ultimately, when you're paying, that's the only barrier to entry if you've helped other people before. Now, if you want to get all technical, then I would think if you want to find out how they coach and maybe a coaching style, definitely interview by all
Mm-hmm.
means. That would be a differentiating kind of thing that you want to consider. But as far as whether you should be hired or not, who's going to say? I think ultimately, though, when it comes to, we talked a little bit about this, Kirsten, is that when people start creating content and want to be creative and want to be this expert, that's where the trap actually is. I just borrowed a little bit from you, but I think
Yes,
that's
you
where the
did.
trap actually,
The
that's where the trap
TRAP.
is. Yes. And all that's capital, and we can talk about acronyms later. But I think that's where people start to kind of expose themselves as to what type of information. And really, that might even be a little subjective as it is. But if you want to be relevant, you got to kind of show that you're relevant, and you're not talking about the things that were done back in 2000. And I think people are
Mm,
going to look at that and kind of say, okay, well, this person talks about these issues, and that resonates more with me than the person that doesn't talk about these issues, who leaves that completely out, in which you can just go to, like Damien said, the library's open, Google's available. If
yeah.
you want to even use AOL, be my guest. But all that, all that to say is that these arguments about what methodology and what we're telling our clients, and painting broad assumptions on the internet to make it seem like you're an expert, is kind of old, and it's wear out, and really it's just creating an argument for argument's sake, not really helping a job seeker move forward in their search.
I 100% agree with what both of you said, and I've taken pieces of both of those things to really define how I go about doing that part of my business, because
Mhm.
it wasn't that I woke up one day and said I'm going to be a career coach. It was just that that's what they call what I was already doing, and now people have to. Now I need money So people should be paying me for my services in some kind of way. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when people come to me, and these are normally the ones that I refer to other people, because I will ask
Hmm.
someone, how many other folks have you talked to
Mhm.
already? What are your
All I
needs?
do is
Because
refer. Yeah.
I may not be the right person for you, because I
Hmm.
promise you, maybe 9 times out of 10, the people that are coming to me are coming for a resume fix, and that's it.
Hmm.
And that's not what I do. So I let them know
Yeah.
that here are some people that is their expertise, that is their bread and butter. This is what they want to do, and if that's your job search plan, I am no one to tell you otherwise. Please, here are these people that can help you execute your plan, because that's not for me. But I like what else you both said about getting information from other places.
Mhm.
And with the internet, and there being so much information, like,
Hmm.
how do you really pinpoint like what's for you? Because a lot of times, and I've seen it, especially when I've been, either at a crossroads, or feeling bad for myself, and it's okay to feel bad for myself sometimes, like, yeah, but come back later and then remind yourself of how dope you are. But
Hmm.
when I'm in those places, like, I'm only looking for confirmation that I didn't do anything wrong, that I'm not the problem, and that
Right.
everybody is against me. So how do we get that like, how do we set our minds as job seekers to really weed out the noise and go for the meat, like the real information that's going to help us?
What I tell a job seeker, uh, especially if, let's say they come to a professionals in transition meeting,
Hmm.
and I run them through, give them an overview, and then they go to another support group, which all of them have gone down since COVID. So we're the only one in Northwest North Carolina left. But they would go, and then they would come back and wonder why things weren't working. And what I would say is, find one methodology that resonates with you and screen out everything else.
Okay.
Because no matter who you go to, a career counselor, a support group, if you're doing it completely on your own, a career counselor or a support group will give you their theory of how you find a job, their methodology. And so my recommendation, is pick one and stick with it. And if you pick up additional information that melds into what you're doing, is fine. But if you bounce from this person to this person and from this site to that site, not only are you going to be overwhelmed, but you're going to be confused too.
Mm.
And like you were saying, there is so much information out there that many people become overwhelmed and then just shut down. Um, and there is help out there. And career counselors and life coaches do a phenomenal job of helping people. But then there's this whole bunch of people, the 80%, that can't afford career
Mhm.
counseling or life coaching. And that is pretty much where we come in. And it is a different feel, but we've had CEOs and we've had CFOs and uh, parents and their children and what have you. But again, you are in control. You are responsible. You need to find your own path and stick to it. If it doesn't work after 4 or 6 weeks, maybe it's time to look again at where you're going. But again, don't be a ping pong ball, right? Go straight ahead.
Okay. Mark, anything to
And,
add?
yeah, I'm going to add because I think he at the end, Damien brought up something that might that needs to be understood. For instance, I'll give an example. Last year, and Damien knows who this person is because Damien's been to my workshops that I do every summer. Uh, I do it in conjunction with my church, but I also make it available for my email list. This person came and they actually found a job, but the punchline is they did attend my workshops and they also attended Hannah Morgan's workshops. And she said, and when she told me, she says, "You know what? I would have done the same thing too, because even though Hannah is a job search strategist." And she is like, she has a huge audience and has more of a nationally recognizable name. I don't blame her for seeking out both of us. In essence, she was successful. Now, I've got to say as well is that there's nothing wrong with two approaches if you know how to separate the weeds from the chaff, as Damien also said earlier.
Mhm.
Uh, but it is also in a sense that if something is not working and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it is time for a change. There are job seekers who will do things for even 6 months to a year but don't get any help and wonder what's wrong. Well, you're sticking to one methodology. That methodology obviously isn't working. So of
Right.
course, you need to get a change or incorporate several things and then see which one is actually working and start cutting out what doesn't work.
Good.
I really think that people need to be as judicious as possible. At the same time, if you're not trying different things to find what's working for you, then it becomes your responsibility ultimately because you're the one needing a job.
Okay.
Uh, and you'll need to go forward with whatever is going to work. But a lot of times people will do the things that are kind of old and
Mhm.
they're not always wrong. It's just that it's not effective anymore. And we can
Okay.
have a whole nother discussion about that, but it's effectiveness that ultimately will bring you the results or not. So,
Now,
um,
I do want to stay there though, because I think the folks that
yeah,
are watching really want to know what, because they already may have some ideas about how
mhm,
to job search that came from, even 2 years ago. It's not really that relevant for what we're
sure isn't.
dealing with right
Right
now.
on. Yep.
So the fact that you and Damien have gotten together and you're giving this information for free
Hmm.
to people and how to affect their job search, like I really do
Hmm.
think we need to talk about that. So just
Hmm.
your top one, two, what's one or two things that people can do right now to help their job search along a bit?
I'll go ahead since I don't have a coaching certificate to you know
That was a little
to
shade. Where's the,
to qualify.
where's my where's my demerits? Because that was a little that was shady. That was shady.
that was that was nothing against Damien at all. Damien's my mentor. This is one of the reasons
Yeah.
why I do what I do because of him. But
Man.
with the quality, people know that. But no, I'll say this. Um, One, if you're not deepening your network, you're kind of and Damien's going to say that, so I'm taking that, but he'll add on to it, and he's going to agree that a lack of network going to is going to hurt you in the long run.
Okay.
And there are people who have gotten jobs and may have a current job where they didn't need, they called, or they may have done the application process, which a lot of career coaches will market themselves and say, that's not the way. But if
Mhm.
it works, who's going to tell them, no, that's not? Which we get into the second part is that if you do start to do things that are a little bit more time efficient, we got to talk about networking and we got to talk about how to build a network and to even gather a tribe and also make it a thing that you no longer let go and make it seasonal. As I always say, and you guys have heard me say it tons of times, job search is a lifestyle now. So we got
Mm.
mobile phones that we can use to continue personal development, professional development, however you want to angle it. It's
Mhm.
time to own and control your career. And I know I just put 5 things in there, but all of that leads to a road that will make it a whole lot easier for you when you do have a job. Now, if you decide to wait until you lose a job, these days you lose a light year. You
Yes.
For most people, you do lose a light year, and there are very clear statistics about about the time that you have from the time that you are unemployed to the time that you get employment. These days matter.
Yes.
I'm not going to put a number on it, but I'd rather take 3 or 4 months than a whole year to get a
Hmm.
job. And I think that's where the differentiating is today. And you have to also understand the landscape. But Damien's going to go into another direction. I kind of know what he says because I listen to him every week, and
Okay.
I've read his books and watch all the news programs that he's been on. But so listen to him. But I'm just saying, though, there are differentiating factors that are involved now that 2 years ago that did not exist.
Did not exist.
And there are patterns that you should follow. But I've said my piece. Go ahead, David.
And provided great information, I might add.
Thanks.
Um, I think the thing that I would tell a job searcher, uh, something they could do today,
Hmm.
is take a hard look at your LinkedIn profile. Ask yourself, is it robust? Does it have problem, action, result statements for
No.
every company that you work for?
No, mine does not.
And I need to add more to mine. A problem, action, result statement is when you are at work, and many times, as they say, what gets measured is what gets done. Um, Talk about a problem that you had at work, an action that you took, and a result that was produced. And oh, by the way, if you have those on your resume, which you should, they're transferable over to your LinkedIn profile because many times recruiters will go to your LinkedIn profile long before they'll ever ask for your resume. And if you are job searching, by the way, you can upload your resume to LinkedIn so they have it there. But I'm saying go deep. Look at your headline. You don't want unemployed. You don't want the name of your last position. Look at marks. Look at other people. Um, it usually has the keywords that best describe them,
Hmm.
and those keywords pop when a recruiter looks for a position. And it took me a long time to figure that out, but those keywords define you. And then
Absolutely.
right? And then you have another entry point where you can provide a career summary. And the importance of that on LinkedIn is if I'm a recruiter and I'm looking at it and you've done the right things where you've put your keywords, and then I read a little bit about you, right then and there, I'll make the decision of whether or not I want to read the rest of your profile. The other thing is, as you page down, you have an opportunity to list awards that you received,
Hmm.
causes that you believe in, classes that you have taken, and more than ever, the importance of LinkedIn continues to grow. And as you take classes showing constant self improvement, you can put those down. And as you build, and this is new for me, as you build a curated LinkedIn group. And what I mean by that is I've gone through and looked at my LinkedIn community, and I'm building in 3 directions: media, because I work with the media a lot,
Hmm.
human resource managers, and mid-level directors on up, because that's the audience to which we all play. And
Correct.
before I say yes to a connection, or before I request to be connected, those are the things that I think about. And don't forget about the algorithms that LinkedIn uses. And I'm not going to go into it now. It's another whole show rather, but you can go and Google LinkedIn algorithms and learn about it. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. And if you look at your entire job search, for me, what's changed the most in the past 4 years is that LinkedIn is your bright, shining star that radiates out from you and touches old friends, work friends, people that you are actively cultivating, recruiters, media. It just goes out from there. And it does something that a resume could never do. One, it has your picture, and people go, "Oh, I'm worried about my picture." If your name is John Smith and you don't have your picture, a recruiter is just going to go right by it. It gives you an opportunity, as long as it's um, a good photo of you, to differentiate yourself from every John Smith out there.
Yes.
And rather than going on and on and on, I'd summarize it like this: always be on your LinkedIn profile, always be making changes and improvements, and continue to use the other functions like the job, uh, their job ability, so that the more you know LinkedIn, the better off you're going to be. And understand that LinkedIn is always making changes that OPS they don't tell you about, because they roll things out a little bit at a time. So don't get frustrated with LinkedIn. Use their help feature, be patient, and play in that sandbox every single day.
I can attest to what he just said, because Damien didn't accept my LinkedIn connection request until yesterday.
Guilty as charged.
and not
Guilty as
because
charged.
and not because I'm not awesome and amazing, but because of what he just said, that he had to make sure that I fit into one of the boxes that he is curating his content around. And I'm not mad at him. And I'm very, and like I said, I just thought it was funny, because I was like, we've been on now 2 shows together, been in the same publications, talking about the same stuff. And he is not going to accept my connection request.
Well,
But
you guys know Jack Kelly.
yes,
When I
he
first
still
reached
hasn't
out to
accepted
him,
mine either.
oh that,
Or
but
mine.
it's funny you should say it. It took it took him like 6 to 9 months to accept mine,
And
and,
y'all have a show together.
and we have, well, he accepted before the show. We start the
Okay.
show.
Okay.
That was a little bit of the catalyst of us having synergy. But
Right.
yeah, we were like 6 to 9 months. It's like, what's with this thing? What's your problem? And
No.
so yeah, I certainly understand that
And it's not, no,
you
again, it's not
you
because
can't
he was,
take it personally.
no, no, no. And I'm teasing because, I know there's probably 10 people right now talking about, Keirsten, you haven't accepted my request yet. But
Yeah,
when you do get a lot of requests every day, it's hard to see through, like to go through that list. And honestly, I get exhausted going through that list,
yes,
Sure.
especially when my name is on jobs,
I
and
right.
everybody can see that I'm the recruiter for this job. And then 15 people in 1 minute have sent me a thing. And then the person that I told connect with me on LinkedIn is now pushed down to the bottom, and I didn't get to them yet. So yeah, keep that kind of stuff in mind. Don't take it personal. You can
Yeah, yeah.
always
Can't Don't
follow
take it
us.
personally.
Can always follow us and
Yeah.
keep up with
Well,
what's
actually,
going on.
once they send an invitation, they are following you in
Okay.
essence. They default to that.
Yeah.
until it's accepted, and we can go through that whole discussion. But in essence, once they send the invitation, they automatically follow you until there's a mutual following,
Right.
which, yeah.
All right. So I know you guys like to get to questions,
Mhm.
but I want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the news and how much attention should job seekers be paying to that. There's been some very controversial and hyped up situations like with recruiters around salary and pay transparency. There's organizations like Tesla. Just today, they announced a discrimination suit in California and how certain members of their organization are treated. Google had a whole thing with they were on the dark web talking about how Google has different interview criteria for
Mhm.
its underrepresented, marginalized, historically excluded candidates than it does for the power majority, and how that leads to keeping a homogeneous um, workforce. So you know,
Mhm.
I just named some big companies that people want to work for because of the brand recognition. Like, how much stock should we be putting into these type of things when we're looking for a job?
Well, I'm going to use an analogy of a personal trainer and a dietitian.
Okay.
Um, I have a personal training certification that I don't use and is outdated at this particular point. I don't renew it, but it may relate if I found out that there were certain proteins that were poisonous.
Mm.
I'm going to have to advise my clients accordingly, or that they were ineffective. And I know that my patients were buying this ineffective protein. I have a responsibility, or better yet, we could take the other end. If I don't say anything, they'll be mad that I didn't say anything.
Okay.
So that's in the career industry. I think it's kind of the similar thing. I think if it has some effect to them, and we can argue industries or whether or this, that, and other. Salary negotiation kind of affects everybody.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So in the long term of things, maybe not as somebody right at the beginning, though I may argue you should be talking about salary negotiation at the beginning if you're a career coach. If you're not setting your person up for success.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's just some things that if you don't say anything will be effect. Now, at the same time, there's also been the strikes that have happened.
Mhm.
If my client is not part of those industries that strike, it may not matter. But if I have a client that's trying to get into the manufacturing industry, they need to know some of the ins and outs of what the
Yeah,
manufacturing, and how, and
unbelievable
how
time.
they work. So I think it
Mhm.
depends on your client, the audience, and what's going to affect them either immediately or in the long term. I think some of the side arguments you don't have to go down that road. But I think when it comes to, let's say, a recruiter, and somebody get recruited, it's relevant as opposed to industries where they are unlikely in their position to get recruited. It's not going to matter as much. So there's the old adage, it depends.
Mhm.
But there's
Mhm.
things that also kind of solidify your relevancy as a career coach that maybe you should, because some of that are data points that are needed somewhere down the road.
Okay.
Okay, and my opinion is, I think, a little bit different. Mark, we're going on the bottom line. It depends. Is where
Hmm.
I, net out. But
Hmm.
often, people will come to our meetings sometimes with the clip in their hand,
Yes.
all alarmed about it. And what
Hmm.
I say is, yes, it's a valid concern. Do you have an offer from them in writing? Oh, no, 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 I haven't even applied. And so what I say is, Okay. Have you talked to him? No. Have you applied for a job? No. What is the relevance to you? Oh, well, I never thought of that. I always encourage people to stop watching the news or minimize the amount of news that they read, because people that are job searching get all hyped up about things that they can't control.
Mm-hmm.
And there's already things, they don't have money coming in, they have children, they have a spouse in many cases, all sorts of different pressures on them, all centering around the fact that they no longer have a job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I say is concentrate on the things that are most important to you and don't worry about the things that you can't control. And if you do get to the point where you have an interview with one of the controversial companies, we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, don't worry about what's going on out there, worry about what's going on here and stay focused on your job search, and everything else will resolve itself without your ability to plan, anticipate, or control.
Okay. So do you guys want to, are there any questions? I don't know if there's questions.
Good question. Nobody's commented with the question. Thank you for being kind. Nobody's commented. Just Cynthia. We'll say hi to Cynthia. She said
Hi,
that she was
Cynthia.
watching. She's from
Wow.
Nigeria. We
Very
get them
nice.
every now. We get them
International.
very nice. Yeah, and it's funny. Speaking of international, yeah, I think there's some things that may trickle over internationally, and I think there's some
Hmm.
things that people from other countries watch. Because I get the question. I was talking to someone that I may be doing a project with over in the UK, and
Mhm.
there are a lot of talk about the Great Resignation and those kind of things. Well, we can argue about whether it's relevant to clients or not. I don't think they should dwell on the negative parts of the news. I
Mhm.
think they should be aware that some of these things may into their world. For instance, let's say that during the Great Resignation, there was the fact that people were quitting these jobs, and they were applying. They were wondering, how did I get this interview so quick? And why did I get this interview so quick? And why do they want to start me tomorrow? Maybe not, in a literal sense, but in a different sense. Then there might be some concern for you to look into the company and ask, why did all those people quit? It could mean that this is a very bad job for you to take, and all these people got sick of these people and left. Or it could be these people, there was a whole bunch of people that were unqualified, and that the job had decided to let them go and get more qualified people.
Mhm.
Then those are data points, because they're data, because now you have gone from just being a job candidate to a real viable commodity that they're now willing to pay a whole lot more money for, because you're one of the rare people. That's a data point, because then that affects the way that you negotiate that now, as
Good.
opposed to before. So I would say that would be a direct correlation for the news, as opposed to if you were a blue collar worker and you're trying to get into Amazon. You heard that Amazon doubled the salaries, and
Hmm.
they said that in general at first. Now, mind you, their warehouse workers just got $3 an hour raise not that long ago. So, wow, I can make that much money. No, no, dear, sit down. Uh, that's a data point, though. And that's a
Right.
relevant one, because you have to know the difference. Because Amazon the news headlines just put that out there in a general way, like Bloomberg and some of the others. They didn't
Yeah.
refer to what position.
Well,
Hmm.
So I think there needs to be uh, discernment when you're applying and you hear those things. And it doesn't mean that you should always ignore those headlines, because you need to find out what's applicable to you. Once you find out what's applicable to you, you can't be worried about all the other chatter if it doesn't.
Okay.
So I think those things are important. Those are things that I kind of write about, in the sense that how does that how does this news affect the job seeker, and if it's going to be relevant. Like, inflation affects everybody,
Mhm.
and that's a data point. It's not just news, because it, the company may have decided that they're going to continue to offer the old salary and not one that's going to be based on something that's includes inflation. So I think they need to be paying attention to things like that, that are going to be relevant. But sometimes they need us as career professionals, whether you're a recruiter, career coach, or whatever, to tell people that, yeah, you should pay attention to this, because this is going to matter to you in the short long term, not just when you apply, but also when you come to the table and say, okay, we want to hire you, let's decide on the terms.
Okay.
Great, great. And building on what Mark was saying, when it comes to data points, um, asking questions when you are being interviewed is
Mm,
a requirement for an effective interview.
Hmm.
And
mm,
asking the question, like Mark suggested, you know, how long has this position been open? What happened to the candidate before me? Um, what is your position on what just happened in the news? I mean, those are the times to bring it in. When it comes to inflation, you can ask, do you have a cost of living um, benefit where my salary stays consistent with inflation? All important questions to ask, and questions you should ask,
Hmm.
because you need to engage the person that's interviewing you in a nice way, but also a forceful way, so that they know that your personal abilities and all the things that you bring to the company, but it will cost them, or better yet, it will allow them to make an investment in you. And one of the other things I tell people, especially with the Great Resignation, I had a candidate that I worked for who literally was 62
Mm.
and was at the end of his career, he thought, and then he made this huge jump and went from working for a business that was headquartered in China
mm,
to a company that's now headquartered in Munich, Germany,
mm,
and got this huge increase. And my point is I tell folks that when you are negotiating for your salary, this is the time for you to take a jump, because unfortunately, in most cases, the only way that people get a significant increase in salary is if they move to another company. And to me,
mm.
that's sad that a
It is.
company does not see the value of their own employees, but that's a reality. And I think, going back to the original question, Keirsten, I think that this jump of the top 5% of the people is a direct correlation to people saying, "Hey, I'm done here. I want something better," and being able to go out and find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to add on to that, because I think that's kind of significant in the relevance of the news and how it plays into into the landscape. When you hear things like that, and you hear that, people are, there are different types of data points. I kind of like that word, data point, but 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 I think they hear these things on LinkedIn and other platforms about, and I had a little beef about the way that's being marketed, though it's becoming more of a trend that's going up than down. Is that people say, well, that my clients have gotten more than $50,000
Right, right,
increases,
right.
and it's like the Cam Newton eye roll. It's the whole thing that, it really bugs me, because in essence, there are so many dynamics that go into
Into
getting
that.
those,
Sure.
get that has nothing to do with the career coach and their ability to negotiate.
Thank you.
One, again, the deets are in the content. If you read very carefully, people expose how they they go about figuring it, and it's like,
Yeah.
doggone, that doesn't make any sense. I'll go to my friend Claudia Miller, who actually doesn't have any of those cute little certificates, but doggone, you go deep in her content, she is an expert
Mhm.
in those salary negotiations. I'm not crazy about the marketing aspect, not particularly hers, but there's some people whose proof is in the pudding, but in the wrong way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
really, we can get into the logistics of it, because let's say that you already make $120,000, and you are only leaping to the competition of that particular company. That automatic, you got 10% automatically just for making the jump, because they expect you to have some of the little secrets of the company, and they can leverage that to a certain degree. If that person says boo, then they jump another, they jump to $20,000. Then all of a sudden you get this career coach says, yeah, my client got 20,000, but it had nothing to do with you. So some of those things are not, because that person was already marketable in that sense. So you can look at that person's profile and see that, oh, that person already had the experience, so they were going to do that much without you. So I'm not saying that what people aren't saying legit broadly across, because there's some people who are very savvy and are experts in negotiating.
Hmm.
But if you really look at their content, they have no idea how people got there, because they happen to land somebody who happens to already demand a salary long before you.
Correct.
And maybe they didn't negotiate before, which we can talk about that aspect, but because you made them aware, they gained some courage, which again was more of a decision that they made than you teaching them how to do it. So I think I covered about the whole show as far as relevance, and how, career coaching, and how all this thing works. But honestly, yeah, it really gets on my nerves when people market themselves like that as a whole. But again,
Yeah.
it tells when you look the one layer below and see that, yeah, okay, I get it, and I'm not going to be mad at you. Everybody wants to get up on the competition, but at the same time, how are you going to tell the difference? Because everybody's claiming my clients can, and honestly, without even trying, can claim that, oh, my clients got 20, 50, 100 $1,000, jump.
I don't like the conversation either. As both a recruiter, as my
Mhm.
real job, and as a career coach, as something I
Hmm.
do passionately and with a lot of sincerity. Um,
Hmm.
if you notice, like, I allow people to give their own, I allow people to recommend me on their own, in the sense that, like, I don't
Hmm.
run out and tell people what this I don't claim the successes of my clients, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
Right.
out here saying this person got a $20,000 increase, or this person got, and that's fine. But you also have to think about the ways, what you just said. If you are um, in a role that literally the max salary for your position is $50,000, like, that's just what it is. And I think it
Hmm.
sets people up for this idea that there is unlimited amounts of money
Mhm.
available, that those things are not only exceptional, but that they aren't the exception, because they
Hmm.
absolutely are. There's a reason why um those big dollar increases are the ones that they talk about. Why don't you
Hmm.
talk about that person that you got out of the toxic work environment?
Exactly.
Yep.
Like,
Yes.
and say,
Yes.
like, I got my client some peace that is, like, there's no money value on that. I got my
Mhm.
I got my client back 5 hours of their time a week, because they don't have to commute to work,
Right.
or we
Yes.
shorten the distance they have to
More
go.
of that, please.
I put more money in their pocket, not just because they got a salary increase, but because the benefits that we pursued organizations with better benefits, with better perks, with a better work-life balance, all of those types
Yeah.
of things, more paid time off. So there's a lot of things that go into that I don't think we talk about enough, because I think that our society in general, and I'm speaking mostly of Americans, we decided that having the top salary is what you need to do. But again, it doesn't apply to everyone, because there are some roles that don't allow for a 20, a 50, even a $5,000 increase. You might be at the top of your salary band, or you might be at the top of your profession. And maybe, some of those jobs that are next for you, like, go get those. Those are the ones, those promotions, those different industries that pay more.
I,
Things like
I,
that have to go into it.
I'd like to add on to that because I had that discussion. Actually, I wrote a recent article how sick leave really may be beneficial to certain people in certain industries,
Mm,
more so than a salary increase.
mm,
And I wrote a story about a story that was told that Amazon, there were two Amazon workers that died at the facility because they were told not to go home,
Oh,
because they didn't have enough sick leave. And overall, we look at, and you guys have heard it, but if you dig a little bit deeper, how the Europeans have, like 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 developed countries like Sweden have 52 weeks of sick leave for every 2 years. Uh, that would, to me, that would be a whole lot more worth it, especially in the pandemic and even the post-pandemic era,
mhm,
where really the time off where we don't have in America the parental leave,
mhm.
the family leave to take care. We don't have a mandated, so it depends on your state. And having said that, salary is, there are some states that most states don't have a mandate, but there are certain cities that have it. So
mhm.
therefore, try to give more information. If I could be the czar of content, so to speak, for all of career professional kingdom, so to speak, that would be more. That would be more useful for the
Yes.
average person than to talk about than to sensationalize the whole salary discussion. And I just find it so fascinating that people are willing to go out on the limb on these very lofty opinions, both career coaches and recruiters, to paint very broad strokes about information that there's so many layers to, that
Mhm.
it's troubling,
It
and
is.
it's kind of misinformation in some
Agreed.
ways,
Yep.
because because really you're saying that this applies to this industry or that industry when you recruited for only one really interesting. And that's why I really respect Jack. Jack doesn't get into those things because his industry is very special. The only
Yes.
time he answers those questions is when I ask him for the show. Other than that, he doesn't chime in on any of that because his industry is different. And if he does chime in, he qualifies it very carefully, as opposed to when I hear a lot of the recruiters and career coaches, they jump right into the fray to
Yep.
to 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 get some likes and to get some attention because this thread already has 300 likes and have 100 comments. So
Mhm.
people are going, of course, that's a low end, and that's a whole nother discussion we can get into one day. But
I
but
got you.
I think
So I
it
achieved the
really
goal.
will.
I got you fired up.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
I
These are
got you
things that
fired
really
up.
I'm looking from the outside on in, and
Mhm.
not having a horse in a race really makes a difference in how you give that info. Because I'm careful. I'm very careful, and I like to think that I am. There's some things to be fired up about, and there's some things it's like, okay, let me inform you. This is one side of the argument, and and that's how people should approach in giving job seekers information. And you should, and maybe even say, I'm going to tag some others because I know that there are other people will have a different side to this, and you should probably know as much as you can. I respect that. I respect that kind of approach.
Mhm.
Whew.
One quick thing, Mark knows I have to leave early. I agree with both of you when it comes to putting the money first. There is a senior executive that I've worked with that uh, that talks about all the money they made. You know, they talk about all of the other things. And the
Yes,
other thing is they always talk about this time around, it's going to be the mission, not the money.
yes.
And the the career counselor that's out bragging, I saw that posting too, bragging about the salary increase that this person got that candidate. To me, fine, brag, but you're only going to attract a clientele that is all about the money.
Getting
When
more
in
money. And
fact,
then when they don't get it, then they're talking bad about you, about how you're a fraud and a liar and all that stuff. But like I
well,
said,
exactly
it
right.
depends on the person.
And I would estimate that probably in 75% of the cases that's how it comes out. I mean, the majority of the work that I do starts with life issues first and then builds into career, because
Mhm.
in many cases you have to go back to the drawing board and reconstruct the professional you and where you're going next. So I'll tell you, with that, I have to sign off. This has been
Okay.
wonderful. I very much appreciate it. And Mark,
Yes.
I know you always ask what's new. There is a article that I posted today on
Oh,
how to handle a barbecue in Australia if you're an introvert. Um,
oh,
Okay.
yeah. So in any event,
interesting.
have a
I'll
great
have to check it
weekend.
out.
You
Thank,
too.
thank you
All right.
very much. Let's do this
All right, then.
again. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
let's do
Yes.
it. Let's do it again.
All right. Thanks
Yep.
very much.
Bye
Sure,
bye.
Damien.
Bye.
Kirsten, we're going to have you as kind of the default guest host every now and then. This
I'm
was a
here for
great
it.
this was a great show, and we were able to talk about some things we don't normally talk about. We talk about the ins and outs of interviews, and
Hmm.
the dynamic of the job search. We got to some of that, but I think we need to have a real heartfelt chat about how people need to look at career coaches and notice some of the red flags. And again, I'm not saying that the people who make these claims is not true,
Right.
but they lead with claims that don't, without some context to some
Hmm.
degree. And unless you're following that person on a regular basis and they've created the context, then some of that is misinformation. And, it's interesting how some people don't go into the type of clientele they concentrate on. And, there's a few people that I know for a fact that they have this type of client, and they don't have to brag about those kind of results, because those are typical
Correct.
results that you're getting. And their industry, that's what they do.
Right.
Because in things, and this, if I could go here, I'm going to go over a little bit, but yeah, I'm going to say this as well. When we talk about executive coaching and all that whole thing, and helping executives, and there's some people that don't need to be helping executives from the intel that I know, but they got the label out there. And yeah, I'm calling it out, but I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say that I was thinking of you, so don't ever ask me.
Oh,
But
that's not my wheelhouse.
but but I'm not saying that's not your wheelhouse, but somebody's going to hear this and look at me with a side eye, and I'm okay with that. But when it comes to executive coaching, and through the experience, and had known the real coaches, or not all the real coaches, but I know some who are really executive coach. You don't have the same dynamic when we talk about salary negotiation, because executives of companies, they don't are they're being automatically offered the market rate for their position. So what they get is what they get. They don't have to argue about how much and I need 50,000 more to really show off so I can show off my Lexus. They're not thinking about that. And as opposed to the rest of the world, they might be, but very often they're getting those rates. So and I know some career coaches who've cheated and they say, yeah, this person may, well, look at their profile. Look at the person's profile. And very often they won't say who the person is, which is another punchline that we can talk about. But
But it's not their
nevertheless,
business. It's not
uh,
their business. As my
but
point is, it's not their business to
it's
tell.
not their business, but they're not but there's a lot of context that has nothing to do with the coach. But
Correct.
they're claiming victory for it. It's not like it's a team sport. This is an individual sport that you claim that you've done one-on-one. So the only person is you, where we can argue that too, but ultimately give your client the praise because he set himself or she set himself up for success throughout their career, not because you
Yes,
came along and had this magic elixir. So
correct.
I think that we need to you know let's just demystify some of this stuff that we hear and go on. But yeah, I'm through. I'm enough. I've reached my zen point now, and we've come back, so we're
Okay.
good.
Well, I have enjoyed my afternoon with you and Damien. Thank you
Yeah,
again for having me on as a host. Damien mentioned some things that he's doing. So, if do I have the opportunity to do the same?
you have the opportunity to do the same. Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
please do.
So March 10th, um, hosting or on the well, whatever, however you say the right word. I'm going to be on Job Sync Roundtable on March 10th.
Okay,
Sign up; it's
okay,
free.
okay.
March 23rd is an ERE, another jobs like another panel discussion. This time about recruiters and candidate interactions, and
Mhm.
then on the 24th is a source con, and we'll be doing something fun this time. So
Oh, okay,
yeah, so a
cool.
few stuff coming up. Make sure if you want to, if you care about anything I say or think I'm interesting, you can always follow me at Trap Recruiter everywhere.
Good deal. I don't really have. I have a Lensa.com article that should be coming out next
Ooh,
week, and I've got a couple of others that I've been involved in. So I'll announce that at a later date.
okay.
But for the rest of you, more importantly, we plan to be back here next week on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. We thank you very much for joining us. And should you have any questions at any point, just don't wait for the show. You can contact any of us who appeared here today or in the past. If you have questions about what we said or maybe some of the services, don't contact me about job and career coaching. Go to Damien for all of that stuff. But uh, but in the meantime, I'm excited about some of the projects that I can't really talk about it until they're official. So there we go. In the meantime, peace in the valley of love. We'll see you next week.